please all rise for the singing of Happy Birthday, Dear Tamara. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tamara. Happy birthday to you. A word or two.
Sure.
Take your mic, or we don't want to miss this.
Okay, I guess. Thank you.
Punch the red part.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Y'all may be
I
seated.
always appreciate the love and support I get from each one of you. And this morning my desk is covered with shells and balloons, and it's very nice. So, and you know, I'm getting to the point in life where we don't get as excited about birthdays, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we're very happy for you on this very special occasion.
Thank you.
And we wish you many, many more, just as happy as this one.
Sure.
I bet they don't always start off with a song.
They do not.
Well, let's see if we're legal here this morning. Can I have we are called to order. Let's pledge, and then we'll see if we're legal. Now that everybody's comfortably seated again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and be seated. And now we'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Frank Mann.
Here.
Renee Gordon.
Here.
Mike Gibson.
Here.
Fran Myers. Here. Anita Saracita. Here. Pamela Cronin. Here. Tony Lappy. Here. Colleen DePasquale. Here. Robert Wells.
Here.
Phil Wachulis.
Here.
Jeff Lapp.
Here. Does that sound like a quorum?
Yes.
Sure looks like a quorum. Fine quorum it is, too. Has anybody read the minutes to be certain as to want to move their approval? So moved. I have a motion by Monsieur Aforti, seconded by... Oh, Anita did it already. I'm sorry. My hearing. Is there discussion on the motion? Is there objection to it? It's done. Who from the public would like to regale us this morning? Are you here as a public or a city? You're here as a city. We'll let you be a city.
Jack Carter for our Good Association. Just announcing that we had a very successful season this past year. We had 3 events this year, down 1, which finished close to 70,500 people. Very successful, a lot of interest, a lot of sales. It's been an RV lifestyle order. It was a very successful year, and hoping that we hope for the prices and stable interest rates for the gas prices that ITC are rolling out the road this work. So it's one important thing that we have ready for you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that upbeat report. And then we're glad that fuel has dropped 3 cents in the last week. Yes. Other members of the public that would like to comment? Well, thank you, public. Municipalities. The island is represented this morning with pass-outs. Now, boy, they got it all.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, folks. Ms. Lamamla, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief Designer and City Manager of CML. I just want to give a very quick report. This week we completed one of our capital projects we funded last year. And that's the installation of this handicap accessible tiki hut at Bowman's Beach. We used the Seminole contractor, which there's certain state laws that allow you to get a little closer to the water, et cetera, when you use Seminoles for the construction. It's just a beautiful facility. It was totally
second.
I just want to add that Travel Channel named Bowman's Beach one of the top 30 beaches for families. So lovely to see the beach being not only cared for, but also new assets added to it that enhance our visitors' experience.
The ones that are just consistent with the natural environment. When you look from the beach with the thatched roof, there's just that kind of low profile. You don't even notice the structure out there. It doesn't diminish from the natural quality of the beach, it really enhances the facilities.
Nice.
Thank you, Mr. Mumra. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments to add to that?
No, sir.
Well, we're glad to recognize your presence this morning. Appreciate you paddling all the way over this morning.
Good
Yes, sir.
morning. Todd King, Special Events Coordinator for the City of Cape Coral. I'd like to continue to thank the TDC for its amazing support in the marketing of our signature event, the Coconut Festival, which is reaching into the Tampa and the northern areas, and we're seeing a growth of folks coming down out of that area to be a part of our festival. So I just want to step up and say thank you very much for the continued support of the city as well as our Coconut Festival signature event. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Case. We're glad it was a happy event. Good, good. Other cities would like to be heard from this morning. Well, it's your last shot. You missed it now if you come in later. Ms. Tamra,
Yes, sir. All right.
speak to
Let's
us.
start with bed tax collection. Okay, fixing the mic first. Actually, I'll start with announcing make some staff announcements. First, I'd like to introduce our new sales manager, Erin. Let's see, here she is. Erin joined us about a month ago now, almost, just about a month ago. We just missed having her to the last TDC meeting. She comes to us from McKibben Hospitality Management, and in her previous position, she implemented new sales strategies and booked all the meetings for the Marriott properties in Fort Myers. She brings years of hospitality and sales experience. Prior to being part of the McKibben team, she was at the Floridays Resort in Orlando. She will, of course, handle soliciting meetings and incentives, corporate and association market segments in the southeast portion of the U.S., and we're really happy to have Erin on
Welcome
our
to the
team.
meeting.
In addition, I want to announce that Cindy Hinson has been promoted. Cindy, Cindy joined the VCB 4 years ago as administrative assistant, working with the marketing and communications department. And now she is a communications manager and will be working with Francesca and the communications team. So we're really happy about that. She will continue to coordinate film permits, assist in establishing and maintaining contacts with travel journalists worldwide, along with coordinating media research visits in order to facilitate editorial coverage. So we're really happy for Cindy's promotion as well. And I'm hoping next month I get to announce that we're fully staffed because we're getting really close. I also want to introduce two interns. Maura. Are they in the room for you? I'm sorry. So the rules with the county is you have to go to orientation. So Maura's actually at orientation. She's been here for a couple of weeks, but now she's getting to orientation. I think she had class on the day she started. And then we also have Josh Lambert. Is Josh down here? Josh isn't here? Josh is in class. Okay, so, well, all right. We have two new interns, Maura and Josh. They're both at FGCU. And we're really excited about both of them. They're both in the Resort and Hospitality Management program, and which, as you know, we get a lot of great interns from, so we're real excited to have both of them. I'm sorry, I thought at least one of them was going to be here. All right. Now we will do the bed tax collection report. For March, the bed tax collection was up 5.2% at $8 million. That's a big number, isn't it, for 1 month, $8 million. March is always the biggest month because the people who pay only annually pay in March, the people who pay quarterly pay in March, and of course the regular monthly payers pay in March. So always a very, very big number for March. And that brings our total for the year over $25 million up about 6.6% year-to-date, and of course, March is the midpoint of the fiscal year, so that's a really great position to be in, midpoint of the fiscal year. I know it's not the really big numbers we saw last year, but I think considering how big those numbers were last year, to continue to see growth in bed tax revenue is very, very good news. I think we've gotten a little spoiled by double-digit increases, but that's a nice one, so we will take it. In terms of the Smith Travel Report, occupancy, as we have seen each month this year so far, occupancy for March was down. A little bit less in March than we saw in the previous 2 months, only 1.5% down in occupancy, but you will see that average daily rate was up. Of course, we all know Easter fell in March this year. That certainly helped with both the rate and the RevPAR increases. You see there, 5.5% increase in rate and a 4% increase in RevPAR. I do think that, we will probably pay for that in April when we see the April numbers, so I'll remind you of that when we get to April, but not a bad STAR report. When we got the January report and saw the dip in occupancy, we had 64 straight months of occupancy increases for the destination, so I think it's important to keep that in mind. For the, next slide, please. The passenger traffic at the airport, fantastic March for the airport, up 7.5%, 1.27 million passengers through the airport. Very, very good news for them compared to just under 1.2 million, 1.18 million the year before. So really great increase to see for them and good news for air service development purposes. Year to date, is that year to date? Yes, must be. 3.8 million passengers through the airport through March, 8% increase. Okay, next slide. We're going to skip those, yes, because they're all the exact same as the ones you're going to hear. Now I'm going to give you, bring up Marcia Wood from DPA, and she's going to present to you the first quarter report and share with us some of the information she saw as she was doing analysis of the data. Thank you, Marcia.
Good morning. New setup here, so I'm just getting a little oriented to the nice screen and everything. Good morning, Marcia Wood with DPA. As Tam mentioned, I'm going to go through the winter quarter results, and some of which will mirror closely with what you just saw with bed tax collections as well as the STAR report numbers. Looking at our winter season paid accommodations, the lodging industry performance, we saw not an increase in visitation, but we did see a bit of a decrease. Now, mainly that is due to a lengthening or an increase in the length of stay among the visitors, as well as a slightly lower party size. So while we do see an increase in occupied room nights, if you look down a little bit, of 1.1%. So that would suggest that we had more visitors, but the fact that they stayed a little longer and there were slightly fewer of them in each room translated to a decrease. But on the positive side, we did see an increase in our total expenditures of 4.4%, and then also an increase of 5.9% in what they were spending on their lodging. So again, that ties in with the bed tax collections. I don't think you have necessarily, you didn't present calendar year to date, so it wouldn't quite be the same, but right, you correct. Are tracking along, or we are tracking along the same lines as the bed tax collections in terms of those increases. We did see a little bit of an increase in our available room nights. As I mentioned, we had an increase in occupied room nights, but fairly small. So the two of those together translated to a slight decline in occupancy rate. Again, that tracks with what we see in the STAR report. We also did see the same kind of increase in average daily rate that you saw with the STAR report, and an increase in the revenue per available room. So overall, I would say, a strong quarter. You definitely always like to see visitation numbers going up, but we had seen this throughout 2015. I think fall was the only quarter where we saw an increase in visitation. But at the same time, we were seeing continual increases in the spending of the visitors. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Looking at the 5-year trend, we do see, again, a little bit of a softening in the 2016 numbers when you look at it on a trended basis for total visitation. But we are up, if you look at 2012, 5 years ago, we are up 8.1% from that point. So we kind of had a little bit of a peak in 2014, 2015, and now we're back down to closer to where we were in 2013, but still higher than 2012. Estimated spending, though, has been on a pretty consistent rise over the past 5 years, both in terms of the total spending as well as the spending among those who are staying in paid accommodations. So, again, good markers for performance in the winter season. And that's also, just want to point out that that is the harder time to have growth, because it's your largest or your peak season. So it's going to be harder to build upon that each year. Canada, it continues to be the strong contributor for your international guests during the winter season. We see that right in line with what we had seen in prior years, and Germany and UK falling in just slightly behind that. But again, as we always see, domestic visitors make up the majority of your guests. In terms of the domestic visitors, about half or more than half of them come from the Midwest during this time period. Minneapolis and Boston were the key markets from the Midwest. Usually those are the markets that we see in that time period. I think, there's many factors, most of which are, cold, and also I think there is some effect of the spring training in March as well. Last year, Minneapolis was the top market in the winter season. Boston was not quite as high as it is this year. So I think actually I shouldn't say that. What happened was Minneapolis was a higher proportion last year. It kind of came down, and Boston and Minneapolis are a bit closer this year.
Could I ask you something, please?
Sure.
Do we interview those people? I'm just wondering if there's any way to track the relationship between the two ball clubs that are staying here and the coincidence of those being the two domestic markets that are the
Yes,
hottest.
we do.
Ask them why they come. Did you come to baseball, or did you just come because it's warm here and it's 16 below in Minneapolis?
I think it certainly is a combination of both. I think that...
My first question was, do we interview and talk to these folks?
We do interview. We actually, in March, we do interviews. A small portion of our total interviews are done at spring training games. Roughly an equal number are done at Twins games and Red Sox games, so that we're not biasing the results in that way. I'm trying to think. I don't believe in the questionnaire itself that we have a specific category for did you come for spring training, because that would only apply, it's a survey that we roll out every month of the year. But we do have,
event is
yeah,
on
we
there.
do have a category for sporting events. So, I'm sure that they are there for sporting events, but whether that is their primary reason for visiting, we don't have the data to support that. We did several years ago I guess it was back in 2008, we did an economic impact study specific to spring training.
Rob, go ahead.
I'm assuming you're getting the numbers from two different places. The numbers from where they come from is coming from your hotel partners?
No, that actually is coming from our visitor intercept surveys.
So those are coming from your surveys?
Yes. I mean, we do also collect information from hotel partners when we do the occupancy survey, but not down to the level of detail
Of city?
of
We
city
talk
of where
about
they
region.
came from. We do it more, we do more, I think, domestic versus international and what international markets, but we don't get nearly this level of detail from the occupancy survey.
What's the survey count, the database?
I'm sorry?
How many surveys?
We do 300 completes a month, so this would be based on 900. 900 completes. Most of them are, or I shouldn't say most of them, many of them, at least half, are among people who say they're staying in paid accommodations, and which is what this data is the people who say that they're staying in paid accommodations.
But I think it's also important to remember, this is why we always say the year data is better, the difference between 900 surveys and 3,600 surveys. When you look at that data over time, it's certainly better. And a lot of it has to do with who's willing to complete a survey.
Right.
In fairness, I mean, this is benchmarking so that we can analyze how we're doing, but it's important to keep that in mind. I think to answer your question, Commissioner, the survey absolutely asked them to list the activities they enjoyed or the reason for their visit. And sporting events is definitely one of the reasons for their visit. Doesn't say which is the primary reason for your visit. So, they could check visiting family and attending a sporting event or whatever it would be. Though we have done that research at one point, we did, as Marcia said, in 2008, we issued a report in 2009 that analyzed the economic impact of those visitors specifically, if that helps.
It strikes me as that these numbers are all almost unchallengeable in terms of the coincidence of the origin of these visitors and the two ball clubs that are down here. And I like to take this opportunity, every opportunity I get, to remind a lot of citizens of Lee County that it was tourist taxes that paid for both of the upgrades and the construction of the new facilities, not their tax dollars. And there's a clear return on the investment, and these folks are paying for it. And it's a win-win, and this is a good opportunity to point that out one more time. I do not think these numbers, the coincidence, are subject to challenge.
Right. I mean, Minneapolis and Boston are often, regardless of the season, well, I shouldn't say regardless, with the exception of the summer season, Minneapolis and Boston are typically among the top 5, definitely. So I'm not disputing that that March spring training has something to do with how number 1 and 2 are kind of, I wouldn't do that. But I think it is important to remember too that even at other times of the year, those are important contributors.
Yes.
But they're also, you couldn't meet anyone in either of those communities that haven't heard of our area.
For sure.
They hear it over and over and over again. So I think that it makes an enormous difference.
This might be separate, but Tam, do we have the ability to have the hoteliers confidentially roll up what their demographics are? So
Yes.
you can, 900 is, compared to what we
Punch
can
your
do
little,
as a
punch
sample.
your little red button there. It'll be
Right, it's not a census.
At your discretion, sharing that information
Well,
with
if I'm
us,
sending
yes.
it to you and you're keeping
Right.
it, not showing mine to Rob, of course.
Of course.
Trust him,
And typically, we will ask you to do that when we're looking at a particular market. Like, you may remember a few years ago, we came to you about Canada, and several of you were willing to provide your Canadian data so that we could, get a little more finite in, which markets seem to be performing the best, what should we be hitting, where should we be advertising, et cetera.
I'd be interested to see the winter season with us giving you the data
Yeah.
and to see what cities are.
Well, and if it would make you any more comfortable, you could certainly, we could have that data come to us and we could compile it if it's, because then we're at least the third party.
Because we had briefly had a conversation about California. We're seeing Californians popping up in our top 10. So is it happening
And in our web visits,
Right.
California keeps popping up. And of course, Carol and I have been talking about air service from California. Can't see her. I know she's here because I talked to her. But, we've talked about California a lot and, trying to develop air service from California because we keep seeing it pop up. So California is definitely one I would love to have the data from so that we can use that when we have those conversations. Yeah, I'd be happy to, what we can do is we'll do a little survey and send it out, and then maybe we'll work with you, Marcia, on compiling what we get.
Either way.
The nice thing about Marcia is she won't tell me your data.
Right.
So each one of you can be rest assured that she's going to protect your privacy. That's her oath as a statistician. She makes that pledge. And I don't get any individual data from your reports that you complete to her. But similarly, obviously we would protect your data. We're using it for marketing purposes.
I think you'll find most of the hotels
Yeah.
participate.
Absolutely.
Rob, you got a thought?
Yeah, I'll let you guys make a plug on this, because how many properties are in Lee County, and how many surveys do you get in?
It's a challenge.
Right, so,
It's a real challenge.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, we could add a question to our occupancy survey to try to get this level of information, but...
I'm just talking about the participation and the fact that a lot of individual hoteliers are concerned about giving their data up. And
Right, exactly.
If you're in the room and listening and you think this is some sort of another form that's invading in on your privacy as a hotel partner, then, you might find that this is an interesting conversation. Your data is not being shared with anybody, but it does help us a lot. And if we
Right.
could get the amount of participation amongst hotels up, I think we'd have even better and
Yes.
better data.
I would agree.
And it, so to that point, if we could certainly add something to our occupancy survey to collect that data as a matter of course. The challenge is that, we are struggling to get just over a third of the properties, not just hoteliers, but countywide, to participate in the survey. And it is, every chance we can get to plug that, I think, is good because, we work really hard to make the best estimates possible, and the best estimates are going to come from gathering information from properties.
And by the way, I'm not preaching, because I would think I was on the TDC when somebody reminded me that our properties were not participating in your survey. So, I thought, hey, this is something we should probably do if we're here representing. So I know a lot of properties probably just are maybe not aware or just not, just concerned about where the data is.
Right.
And understand that we're making business decisions based on the data we're able to cull together and making our marketing plans based on that. So
Right.
the better the information in and the more information that comes in, the better for us. So
Right.
we'll put something together to take a look at first quarter from hotel perspective. Even if we only get a small sample, it's another dive at this, right?
Right. Yeah, supporting evidence anyway.
Just one more quick question. I don't remember seeing St. Louis and Philadelphia and the numbers so high. Is that an air service issue, or is it something we're doing that?
I think, again, a little bit of a shift in what we're doing, and those markets are rising up for sure. They're in our first quarter markets. So I think, air service, we all know air service is the key to this conversation. If you can get on a direct flight, come to our community, it's going to make an enormous difference on whether you're going to come. I will say, I found it interesting. Boston and Minneapolis were particularly strong this year, and there's no doubt that's spring training because everybody else was a little more moderated, but they were coming, right? It was a little nicer up north. It wasn't quite as cold. Maybe we'll just stay home this year. We won't come. But if you're coming for spring training, you're coming for spring training. So, we noticed that, and Marcia and I had that conversation. It was clear that spring training definitely, they had committed to come for that specifically, and they were coming. Whether the weather was bad at home or good at home didn't make any difference. They were coming for that purpose.
Well, excuse the interruptions, but I think this has been a healthy discussion
Great
here. Thank you
I
very
always
much.
enjoyed the discussion.
Carrying on.
This is just taking a look at the longer trends, the 5-year trends in available and occupied room nights. So the important thing here is that you want to see When the gap between the two lines is larger, that's going to mean that your occupancy rate is better. So, relative to the available room nights. So where we're starting to see some convergence, let's see, so here we go. In 2012, we had an occupancy rate of, so here we go. Looking here, we've got in 2016, we have the, oh, look at that. How exciting. All right, that was worth the trip. So these, in 2016, we've got the numbers fairly close together. Okay, so.
Amanda will show you how to clear it.
All right. There's a little tutorial here, too. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
Marcia, oh no, it's
Yeah.
dangerous.
I should have gotten the training beforehand, but thank you all for bearing with me. So we do see we've got this very nice occupancy rate here. Also was good last year. Clearly an increase over the 5-year trend where we were high in 2012 at 80%, but now we're nearly 90% for the past 2 years, so that's exceptional. Okay, now I got to clear. Okay. So looking at the occupancy rate, the 5-year increase is up 10%. Last quarter, we looked at this as well. Well, we look at it every quarter. And we had a much larger increase when we were looking at fall. But again, once you're at those high levels, it's much harder to see a large percentage increase over any period of time. This is just the detail by property type, which is in your packet there. Average daily rate, also showing very consistent growth and steep growth. 25% increase from 2012 to 2016. That's pretty huge. Again, details by property type. And so the RevPAR becomes even a steeper incline.
Can we go back to the property type real quick?
Sure. So we're seeing growth in the hotel, motel, resort category, a little bit more fluctuation with the condos and vacation homes. 2013 was down a little bit, but otherwise, past 3 years have been increasing. And then RV parks, campgrounds, fairly consistent increases there too.
Different, almost different.
Yeah, we have a different,
We have different slides.
Oh.
Really?
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're showing,
There's ADR and RevPAR trends. That's.
Are you here?
I'm sorry, go to,
One more.
we're looking for occupancy rate trend.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
By property?
Okay.
Okay.
This, a question for you. I think this is an interesting thing. So what we're saying is the occupancy is potentially slightly down.
Mm-hmm.
Daily rates are up. RevPAR's up. Visitation's potentially a little down.
Mm-hmm.
Number of nights stayed is up.
Right.
Is increased.
Mm-hmm.
So those things seem to be a little at odds with one another. When you think about, you'd think that if daily rates increased, are we getting to the point where we're pushing rate, and so it's starting to potentially affect occupancy a hair. But then, if the rate was high, I wouldn't think that they would extend their stays.
Right.
So is it telling us that people potentially are moving towards more extended stay properties that are offering a value, or is that a misread in the numbers? What is that telling us?
I mean, I think the fact that the rate is increasing doesn't suggest to me necessarily that, we had the dip here in, if we go, So we had a little bit of a dip in occupancy rate this year. But the fact that I think that there's a lot more to do with some of the other challenges that you had in the winter season, with January being a very heavy rainfall month, that might have had an impact on occupancy rate, as opposed to the average daily rate having an impact. So, the people who came, they stayed a bit longer, so that increased your spending, or the spending estimates, but it wouldn't necessarily increase your visitation estimates because the same people were here. So, I'm not looking at it saying that I think that rate is causing the occupancy drop.
I have to say, February was the big challenge. If you look at the STAR data, you saw we were down 1.5% in March, but that decrease for February, if I remember, was 6.8%. That's the one that's driving that occupancy dip, which I think we all know that it was the perfect storm of a whole bunch of things. the big Zika announcement, the big rainfall, the water quality, a number of things. So I think I wouldn't be reacting super quickly to say it's a rate, Rob.
Yeah.
You might, if that continues over time, there's always that delicate balance as a hotelier, right? I'm going to push rate until I feel pushback on occupancy. And I'm not sure it was the rate push that was that caused the decrease in occupancy. I think you would see that more as a trend over time. Am I overstating?
No, I agree.
I have to agree too that, we saw this year that occupancy did drop, basically from all these influences we had this year. We also did see some rate pushback, at least a lot of the union hotels did. So I think that we've been pushing rate. Sometimes rate does actually have an effect to drop your occupancy, because of course, a hotel you're going to sell, with all due respect, 50 rooms at $100 and 100 rooms at $50. That's the whole goal, that kind of thing. But I think it's more your outside influences this year that kind of drove down the occupancy, because occupancy was, less in February and March. So I don't think it was rate as much as it was
Right.
all the
Right.
bad stuff.
And in fairness, we saw a dip in visitation last year in the first quarter because we had people staying much longer. We
Right.
saw, people, because it was so darn cold up north. We really, this is the part that's hard. We had 2 great winters, really, really good winters. Those 2 polar vortex years were just, they were unfathomably good. And I think, you're seeing that, I don't want to say go back to normal, but a little bit more of a normal winter trend in this season,
Right.
minus what happened in February.
Right.
I think February's the odd man out.
To me, and I'm just thinking logically here, whether they stay 7 nights or 2 nights shouldn't affect your occupancy, because they're still taking up room.
Right.
So length of stay shouldn't necessarily impact occupancy. I don't think that doesn't seem logical.
No.
So I really think it's just all the rough stuff, all the bad PR.
Right.
I think so too. When you go to a little go to visitor satisfaction, that also can reflect back on the rate. That'll tell you a lot.
Right. You're going to see in a few minutes, I think, that higher rates are going to make people more of a critic. And I think
Yep.
you're going to see that in a few minutes. This is the age of being a critic. It's very popular.
Right.
Everybody wants to deal with it. So you're going to see that in a second, I think.
The other
Segue.
the other support that we have, just not to beat a dead horse, but is in the occupancy survey, we do ask hoteliers or property managers to tell us anything that positively or negatively impacted their room sold for the period. We saw a lot of negative comments, a lot more. I compared it back to last year this time, a lot more negative comments in general, and most of those comments are about the rain, the rain down here, the brown water, and then also that there were milder conditions up north. So there was, and a few comments about, the Canadian dollar. But I didn't see anything about, we got pushback on rate, or really those were thematically what you would come away with if you were looking at those comments. And I think we had at least I think about half of the properties who participated in the survey provided a negative comment, which is very unusual. So, okay. So, RevPAR up 37% over the past 5 years, or looking 5 years ago. And then jumping ahead to visitor satisfaction, we still have very high overall satisfaction if you look at the very satisfied and the satisfied ratings combined. So we've got 90% versus 92%, but we see a little bit of a shift in where they fall in those buckets. Not a significant issue, but we've got 47% now instead of 51%, so slightly fewer than half who are saying very satisfied, but we've got a little bit of an increase in those who are saying satisfied instead. In terms of the quality of accommodations, again, the far exceeded and exceeded and met combined are on par with last year. We see that same kind of shift where we've got slightly fewer who are saying far exceeded or exceeded, and slightly larger proportion who are saying met. So it's just kind of a shifting of where they're falling. And that we've seen fairly consistently, I'd say, for the past year. But it doesn't have an impact, fortunately, on their likelihood to recommend or their likelihood to return to Lee County. We still see very high levels of survey respondents who say that they are going to return to Lee County, and 6 in 10 who say that they'll do so in the next year. So this was the one that was a little surprising, more than a little surprising to me. We asked this occupancy barometer question, projected reservations for the next 3 months. And I looked at the data to see if it was wrong, because we really had been seeing very positive, not just for the winter season, but for many of the quarters, we've been seeing positive perceptions of how reservations compare to the prior year, and all of a sudden this big dip. And we've got the 5-year data here. 61% say that their reservations are up or the same from this period. So now we're looking at April, May, and June. So looking at the spring season, how are your reservations? So we have got 61% who say that they're either up or the same, versus last year at this time we had 89%, prior year 91%. So looking back at the past 5 years, this is the lowest that we've seen. I went back even further. It's not on this chart, but I think I went back to 2011. I think it was further back than 2011, to find another year that was comparable, and I think it might have been in 2010, where we saw these lower levels of reservations. And I think there's a couple things. One, perhaps it's coming off of that winter season where people were feeling less positive because of, not that it was a bad season, but just in terms of the brown water and so forth. I think that may be having some impact. I think I put the Easter timing. Let's use our fun little thing again. Easter timing. We do have Easter in March this year, whereas, in most of the prior years, Easter is in April. The last year we had a March, there was a dip. Obviously not as great as what we see this year, but that would have an impact on how your reservations would look for the coming spring. So
Typically, Marcia, their estimation is a bit more negative
Yes.
than the results
It
turn
is.
out to be.
Yes.
That's the first thing. Marcia and I had this conversation. I assume it had to be the Easter issue. But it's worthy of a conversation with you guys. Are you
I'll say at
feeling
my
lesser?
hotels, the book booking window shorter, much shorter. I
So it
mean,
could be an
so,
artifact of that
You know,
as well.
I may go into a month that I'm down to pace, but as I get into the month, I'm fine. And so
right.
we've seen the customer much shorter
Shortening.
booking window.
You know, I have to agree with you. I think the last few years, you know, we've had this amazing level of 10 and 15% increases year after year. This year, I don't know, I've been in the business 28 years, and I think I know how to forecast. Well, now this year, I don't know how to forecast. Seem to get anything straight. The booking window is a lot shorter. I'll look at today for next Wednesday, and I'll be at 40% next Wednesday. But I think I'll probably be in 90% by the time I get there because the booking window is so short. I think people are holding back. Election years, to me, have always been pretty positive. You know, the growth has been good. This year, with all due respect, is, I guess, less hope. I think people are holding back a little bit, I think, waiting till the last minute. And also I see in the summer months, we tend to turn more towards, you know, interstate travel.
Right.
And they're definitely last minute stuff.
Right.
Even the sports teams, for example, they used to book out, which is where we see the biggest decline, used to book out, you know, 3 or 4 months in advance. They're now booking out maybe a month, 2 weeks in advance. So it's still going to be there.
Right.
But it's just not showing it. So we're a little more, less optimistic and kind of cautious. I
Right.
think, in what we're seeing. And most everything is flat to down in bookings. And it's all because of that last minute kind of trend.
I would comment too that it depends on the properties.
Absolutely.
I know our cottage properties, which have a lot of strong repeat clientele, are forecasting very well. Tween Waters, which again has a history and a lot of people, is still holding very well. Westwind is more of a late booking window, showing that, but our cottage properties are very strong right now, and still holding great.
Would you agree, I'm just looking on a limb here, that maybe that would indicate beaches versus inland? The beaches probably are a little more optimistic because they book out further, whereas the inland book out later.
I would agree with that for certain properties, but even on the beach, like Bill would say, the window has gotten shorter on some of our beach properties, and we still feel that too. You know, we know going in Memorial Day weekend, which is a big weekend for all of us on the beaches, et cetera, we know a lot of people hold off the last minute just looking at weather. They're coming from the East Coast, and they know the forecast, they know well enough. So the traditional people have already booked, but there's a lot of people just on the edge, just like you say, holding back. And they want to make sure that if they're going to spend the money, that they're going to have at least good weather for it. So they're on that booking window for Memorial Day, we usually hold on a little tighter.
And when I dove into the data more deeply to look at who the properties, what the composition of properties were that were saying down, most of them are hotel properties. And so I think that kind of ties together with what you're saying, and a disproportionate share compared to what we've seen in other periods.
Right.
So,
I think it'd be an interesting question to ask is, while we see these reservations and the pace being down, the other question would be, you feel like you're going to be okay, though? You know, because I think that would be a great question to ask. Is that, yes, I feel this is down, but I think I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that would be a great
What
question.
measure are you
Right.
going to be
Right.
okay? That's a yes or a no?
yeah, yeah,
On a scale of 1 to 10?
right.
You're going to be okay in a, you know, you're going to be okay at the end of the month. Yeah, I might be okay, you know.
Yeah.
but-
Little smileys on the chart or something.
Because that's telling me, yeah, I don't look great now, but I think I'm going to be okay.
Right.
You know?
Well, and maybe I'll think about
thought, I don't
how we might be able to word a question like that.
Just a thought.
Instead of stars, you just smile.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe that'll make the survey more engaging too. And we'll have
If we can
more
draw on
people.
it, if we can draw on the
Right.
survey,
I'm
that'd be
telling
great.
you, that's a big deal. Okay, well, that's all I had for today, so,
Thank you, Marcia.
sure. Thank you.
Nancy McPhee will help us with the beach and shoreline portion.
Are you still clear?
No, sir, I'm done, I'm officially done, now we're going to move on to new business.
Well,
But-
let's see.
But our team will help with that as well.
What do we need to do, Counselor, to formalize that beach and shoreline funding?
pay attention to Nancy McPhee.
Shut up and listen to Nancy. Nancy, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm here today to ask for the TDC to formally approve the fiscal year 16-17 beach and shoreline funding recommendations. Thank you to those of you that reviewed the request. We had 22 in total, and you conducted your workshop on April 28th. And from that workshop, I need to ask for two things. You need to make legislative findings on 6 projects, and then you'll need to approve funding for 19 projects for next fiscal year. So typically how we do this is Andrea prefers that I read each separate request that requires legislative finding. You make a motion if you want to approve the legislative finding on each one, so we need to do 6, and then we'll formalize the request for next fiscal year. Okay?
Read the first one.
Okay, the first one is the City of Sanibel's Beach and Shoreline Erosion Survey, and you need to make a legislative finding that this project is directly related to tourism and furthers the purpose of promoting tourism.
Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
I hear a motion and a second. Is there discussion on it? Is there objection to it? It passes.
Okay, the second request is the City of Sanibel's Island-wide Beach Management Plan. You need to make a legislative finding that updating Sanibel's Island-wide Beach Management Plan is directly related to and promotes tourism.
Do I again hear such a motion?
Yes.
Rob and Sarah Sita. Is there discussion? Is there objection? Show that one also passing.
The next project is the Ding Darling Wildlife Society's Perry Tract Kiosk. You must make a legislative finding that the purpose of the expenditure fund is primarily related to the advancement and promotion of tourism.
Again, such a motion. Sarah Sita and Wells. Is there discussion? Is there objection? Show that one also passing.
The next project is the Conservation Foundation of the Gulf Coast's request for a Matlacha Pass boardwalk and kayak launch. You must make a factual determination whether this project is related to tourism and primarily promotes tourism.
Do I have such a motion? So moved. By Sarah Sita, second, Afertit. Is there discussion?
Count me in for all of them.
It would be easier, but she's making us take them one at a time, so we'll suffer through this. Is there further discussion? Is there objection? Show that one also passing.
Okay, the next request is the Barry Allen Park Society, Gasparilla Island Lighthouse, Pathways and Signage. You must make a legislative finding that interpretive signage, turtle-friendly lights, plant markers, and wayfinding signs are related to tourism and primarily promote tourism.
Show that motion by Myers. Seconded by Sarah Sita. Is there discussion? We don't want to mix it up here. Don't let everybody feel left out. Is there objection? Show it passing.
Okay, the next request is the Town of Fort Myers Beach, tram for the Mound House. You must make a legislative finding that this project is related to tourism and primarily promotes that purpose.
Motion by
You need not.
Jeff.
I'm not
No, we
going to
can't.
make that motion.
Oh, he can't. You can. I'm sorry. Back to Sarah Sita. Okay. And the second by Afertit. Discussion, objection, show it passing. Show one objection.
Can I do discussion?
Oh, I am
Yes.
sorry. I thought you were voting no, or yes, or
But I just think on the record.
back everything up. There's been no vote.
Second is that I'd like to go on record that it's not the Mound House is an issue for me, but I think we need to recognize as a group, for those of you who were not here that day, that we are now setting a precedent by buying a tram that will take somebody from a parking lot that's further away from the beach back to the entity, because we have other places in our county, and we're setting a precedent that we could end up having more tram requests out of beach and shoreline funding, because this is not the only facility we have in Lee County where it's on big space or big property, or the parking itself is not, really convenient to the museum or whatever it is. So I just think we just need to be aware of that, because we've talked a lot about setting precedents in the past, and these legislative findings, we really have minimized those over the last 10 years because we got ourselves into some jams. So I just want to go on record and say, I think everybody that wasn't here that day.
What about Lover's Key? How far is that tram ride that we?
That's far. I'm not disputing. I'm just saying that now that we've done this for a museum,
Okay.
that's a beach facility. We're doing this for a museum, and this is not the only one we have. So
Okay.
I just think we need to be aware of that. Thanks.
Further discussion? Rob.
I think that around the table that day, just for the people that weren't part of it, that we're making the legislature, I mean, in my mind, we were making that finding because of the fact that they were extremely limited based on the original facility, and they couldn't get any parking at the time. Now, I know that opens you up to the problem that you're concerned about, is that opens you up to a number of other places which probably have overflowed their parking at this point and now are looking for maybe off-site locations. But this started where in the beginning there were no locations around for parking, so they had no choice but to find some, and this is why the only reason that I could be for it, there was no parking around the immediate area, so they were sort of forced to buy this lot that was in a remote location and bus them over. So just
Further discussion? Is there objection to the motion? Just do Pasquale objecting, but it passes. Thank you.
Okay, your final action is to approve the fiscal year 16-17 beach and shoreline funding recommendations for 19 projects in the amount of $9,513,141.
I have a motion. I repeat. Sarah Cedar, second. Discussion. Is there objection? Discussion.
Just a quick request that we had a lot of conversation about Fort Myers Beach and their funding, and the leftover funding at the end of this year would go into the reserves, correct? So if we could just, at the end of the fiscal year, once they've cleared out everything, if we could just find out what that total is?
Sure.
Like when we're done. I thought there was like 100, maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly. Wasn't there 100,000?
Yes, at the end of the workshop, the formula was set up incorrectly. And if you look, the difference between the amount eligible and the amount that you've recommended is $100,000. So that bottom box was, the formula was just wrong. So you have $1.2 million remaining that went unspent.
Versus what we thought was 100?
Yes.
Oh, golly. Like a book.
A lot of money.
Okay. So that all goes into the reserve pot? Yes, it does. Okay,
Thank you.
Jeff?
I have one question. I'm sorry that I was not there that day, and maybe I would know the answer if I was there, but City of Fort Myers is a large amount of money. Is there a Cliff Note quick version of why nothing was given to them?
They were here and asked, and they weren't technically correct in their asking, so they weren't eligible.
It's the
They
pier.
pulled it.
They pulled it at the end. It was.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
But we said nice things to them and offered them a chance to come back. It was a very friendly meeting. Did we call for a vote, or did I? No. Further discussion? Is there objection to it? No. Show that last one passing too. Now, am I done? Did Nancy quit? She left? Budget report? Bertha?
To expedite time, we've presented to you the budget report, and Berta will only come up if you have questions. We just need a motion for you to accept the second quarter budget report.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Tony?
Tony made the motion. Is there anybody willing to?
I'll second it.
Second, we got a lot of courage showing here this morning. Is there discussion on the second quarter budget? Is there objection to it? Show it accepted. Council information?
There are several items in your packet you might find of interest. Just some evening reading for you in your spare time.
TDC members, Pamela, let's start with you. Welcome back from your trip. You want to give us a quick report on it?
Oh, it was fabulous. But you know, the best thing about it is you go to all these wonderful places overseas, and it's an amazing thing. And then you get to come home to paradise and see all your friends. Life is grand.
That's a great report. We'll leave those just bubbles flowing. And Jeff?
Yes, just to let you guys know, our Lee County Hotel Association has another luncheon on Thursday, May 26th. It's the Holiday Inn Fort Myers at Alico, and our speaker will be Mike, I think it's pronounced Young, who's president and publisher of the News Press Media Group. And so that should be a great little meeting. So go online to our website at leecountyhotelassociation.com and make your reservation. Should be a very nice meeting. Also, just in saying, I have to say this because I know it drives people crazy, but I'm going to say it anyway.
your reserves now will now come to, with this 1.2, almost 10.5. So there's a lot of money in there that we could use for great things. So please, everybody on this board, let's be watchdogs and make sure that we're spending this on the appropriate items and maybe making sure that a lot of it can go to marketing. But that's just my little soapbox, so please, please keep watching that. 10.5 million in reserves now, 10.5.
Or we just split it evenly, one of the
We could, yes, that's a whole other issue that I'm on record, so I really can't say that. I think that would be tough to do, but yes.
It would probably be safer if you hadn't brought attention to it. Ms. Saracita.
I'd just like to publicly thank you, Tam and Nancy, Glenn, all of you that came to Fort Myers Beach to make a presentation to the council. It was very informative and greatly appreciated, and you were fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Monsieur René.
I've got nothing, thank you.
Nothing. Fran?
You've got the airport news and notes in front of me. The first paragraph is very interesting, and so is the second. Hope you'll take a look at it.
Ms. Di Pasquale.
Just a reminder that next Friday is our Chrysalis Awards, trade show and awards. We have almost 300 people signed up already. We have sold out all the trade show booths, which is 50. So, but we do have a cutoff date of, we would like you to book by tomorrow, but earliest would be noon on Monday, because we do have to get a count to Harborside. So if you plan on attending, you can't wait till the last minute for this, and we'd love to see you there. It's gonna be a good time. Thank you.
Great. Bill?
Last week, I had the pleasure of traveling with Pam. We went to the digital Silicon Valley with Visit Florida. We met with Google, Twitter, Uber, Airbnb, Adobe at their corporate offices. It was mind-blowing. So if you're not focused on the millennials, better soon. So
Video, and segmentation. I did do a little article about it, but it was a great experience. I feel a lot more knowledgeable having done it, and I think it will help us in our marketing efforts for sure.
They do, they're going to try to keep doing it twice a year. You would never be able to get into these corporate offices with the power of Visit Florida. So I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to participate, to go next time.
Great opportunity. Good. Mr. Mike?
Good, thanks.
You're good? Mr. Wells?
I would like to see a discussion maybe on the agenda of the beach and shoreline and where we're at with the funding of these capital projects. You know, when we raised the tourist tax a number of years ago, there was a picture painted in the media that money spent away from beach and shoreline was detrimental to the beaches, and that was the most important part of our tourism. But what you really are seeing over the last couple of years is we easily cover any maintenance of beach and shoreline with these funds. This has become a real capital project situation where they come and we fund a tremendous amount of capital projects. And in this case, we've still got in excess of $1 million going to reserves. And I agree with Jeff a lot on this. You know, our charge should be to bring tourism to Lee County. And when we leave that in reserves and we're not spending it to combat various stories that are out there that might not even be factually correct or overblown, I think we're missing an opportunity for advertising. And I think we should take a hard look at what we're doing with the program, as we clearly have tremendous resources to spend that are going unspent. And we're, again, more than covering any of the service issues that we have with these beach and shoreline.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Told you you were a troublemaker, Jeff. Now
I am a troublemaker, everybody. I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of that.
Keep
I
that
like
pot
being a
stirred,
troublemaker.
honey.
why you're here, buddy. We love you.
Exactly.
Tony?
In closing with that, I kind of agree. I will give you a nice report. I mean, I would walk the beach probably if I can every night, and the water quality is really super right now. It's never just like it's always been, but at the same time, we have to keep our guard up to keep working on solutions to make sure we maintain that water. But it's spectacular right now, and I'm sure the tourists will love it.
I said it's a perfect segue for you, and you're going to be going, right? To Washington?
Oh, yes. Commissioner Kiker and I are going to be in D.C. next week, and we're going to bring back billions. That million will be No, Washington, this has been the best year we've had in a long time, or in memory, for as far as real action up there meaningful. And we're up there, now that the pump has been primed, we just want to make certain somebody's still got the handle, and it's going up and down.
Good.
This is good news, and there's a collective effort all over South Florida that I'm sure y'all are witnessing as we move forward. Well, we are finished, except for, now that we are on the record, let's recognize again Pam and her birthday, and come share with us.
Thanks for everybody.
That's the meat cake,
Nothing
the
better
chairman
than
said.
champagne. See, I'm feeling they came over.
Thank you.
I love Sunday morning brunch. Because it feels like vacation, doesn't it? It just feels like, yeah, it feels like you're in a different world.
Quietly go. That's what I like. I don't know. They're